Earlier in the lesson, we introduced monasteries as an important part of the medieval Christian church. These were communities where monks and nuns would gather together to dedicate their lives to God through prayer, through worship, through work, through study. The monasteries gave the church several advantages, which we introduced in our notes. They're also an example of how all of the pieces, the religious and cultural influence, combines with the economic and political influence as well. So they're worth taking a closer look at. It's an opportunity to use a variety of sources as well. You're going to explore 3 texts, all of which come from secondary sources that would be considered nonfiction and credible, but present different information in very different ways. The first text you're going to look at is a piece of the blue textbook that we have used throughout the course. It's a 7th grade quick look textbook that's meant to be a very, very fast, almost superficial overview of each topic. It's not meant to be super engaging. It's more focused on being clear and presenting really objective information. They know that the schools are going to force you to read this book, so they don't have to try and always hook your attention so much as create things that many students will be able to understand on a simple level. The second text we're looking at is coming from this core knowledge series, and it's coming from an 8th grade version of it. It's still a textbook, but this is meant to be a more in-depth, more challenging, more independent read textbook, rather than something that's meant to be like a fast preview for the beginning of a class discussion. And so it's going to go into more detail with a slightly more elaborate structure behind it. And then the last text we're going to look at is the really different one. You're going to look at a piece of an entire history book. This one was published just a few years ago by an expert of medieval history, and it is an entire book, a big one. It's a little over 500 pages, completely on the Middle Ages and how power was distributed during this time period. And so you're going to read one of his chapters dedicated to the church, a section focused entirely on monasteries. And even though a history book like this is like the textbooks meant to be nonfiction, secondary, credible, it also is very different in that it's meant to be more engaging. And so big parts of his chapter are written in the form of almost like a story. It's a real story, but it takes this kind of narrative structure because he needs to sell these books by keeping people's attention and getting good reviews and having them sort of recommend this to others. It also combines more than just presenting facts of what happened. As a historian, where he is adding value is that he is presenting his analysis of what we should learn from this. And so he describes what the takeaway we should gain of these monasteries and what it maybe teaches us about the time period and about our lives today. And so it's much more analytical than just the fact presentations you get in textbook pieces. Follow the instructions in the absence note to read your way through these, paying close attention both to the influence of the monasteries and the different types of presentation you get from the 3 sources.